Good morning, grade 10. This week's HGP focus on the most essential learning competency, which is to respond to the needs of the community towards peace. In order to understand it, all you need to do is to sit back and relax, listen attentively to the lecture, and do the given task. If you switch on the TV news, open the newspaper, or click onto a popular news website, there's always a news about a war, ongoing conflict, and a general lack of peace among different groups of people. In an increasingly globalized world, we should understand each other better, stand even more united, and strive for peace. Sadly, the truth is quite the opposite. There's conflict in Russia, in Ukraine, all over the world, in fact. As individuals and citizens, how do we deal with this? How does this relate to us? How can we make positive changes to enable us to live in peace? Now, you may be thinking, how can we honestly make a difference? Well, the reality is that change really does start at home, folks. If we build strong, united communities, we can fight hate crime, racism, and take a stand against divisive politics. These are real issues which work their way up home from the bottom. If we fight toxic narratives, common misconceptions, and negative stereotypes, the media and politicians lose their power to drive communities apart. Ultimately, that's where conflict starts, and that's what war is: a lack of peace, tolerance, understanding, compassion, and ability to live alongside others. Here are the principles of how can you make change. Rule number 1. Treat others the way you wish to be treated. The good old golden rule says empathy, tolerance, and peace. This principle teaches you to love yourself and love others. It spans cultures and faiths and is a universal age-old concept which can't fail. Rule number 2. Listen to hear what others have to say, not to speak. Engage in dialogue with an open mind and the real will to listen to others. Only then will you be able to understand each other and build bridges. Change cannot happen and peace cannot be established if people are unable to communicate with others, to listen to their experiences and views and show empathy, understanding, and compassion. Rule number 3. Accept difference of opinion. We all have different opinions and we may not all agree on the same things. Building compromise and mutual understanding is incredibly important. Sometimes we simply need to agree to disagree and recognize that there are different beliefs and forms of expression other than our own. Rule number 4. Do not fight violence with violence. Violence is never the answer. Peace can only be brought through free will, dialogue, empathy, and forgiveness. Do not stoop the same level as someone who is violent and therefore continue the vicious cycle. This does not change anything. Rule number 5. Fight extremism in all its forms. Do not categorize terrorism as a religious phenomenon and single out or stereotype certain groups of people. Extremism is a human disease which can take many forms. All forms of extremism and hatred must be fought in unity as a community, or else further division and conflict will arise. Rule number 6. Accept that identity is fluid. Any one person can have multiple aspects to their identity. Identity comprises many elements such as nationality, cultural linguistic origin, age, and religious beliefs. Identity can and does change, taking on many new forms and means of personal expressions as we learn new languages, move home, adapt new beliefs, marry into a different tradition, and experience life. Do not put people into a box. Avoid categorizing people according to an us versus them narrative. And remember, we are all singular individuals with unique experiences. Such approaches and narratives are highly divisive and unproductive. Rule number 7. Avoid stereotypes. Take people for the individuals they are. Avoid misconceptions, stereotypes, and toxic narratives and get to know a person instead. This will avoid offense, misunderstandings, and ultimately help you to create a real bond with others based on true understanding, empathy, and trust. After all, no one likes to be judged, especially from the outside. Rule number 8. Approach the media with skepticism. Don't just believe everything you see on the TV, in the newspaper, or on the internet. Think objectively for yourself. Get to know the people and facts behind any story, and don't fall for media scapegoating. Stand united. Rule number 9. Be careful of the language you use. Your choice of language, alongside tone of voice and intonation, all convey a message. Make sure that the message is positive. Be mindful of the language you use. Do not underestimate the power of language, for better or for worse. And remember, it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. Rule number 10. Let go of the past. You can't move on if you're stuck in the past. Learn lessons, but also learn to move forward for the greater good. Forgiveness doesn't mean you agree with everything. It means you're able to move on without grudges and resentment. Only this way can communities heal and move forward together. Rule number 11. Stand up for others, not just your own community. If we only fight prejudice and injustice against our own friends, family, and community groups, then we ultimately fail to protect the wider community and society as a whole. Discrimination and prejudice know no boundaries. For a community to live in peace and harmony, everyone's rights and freedoms must be respected. Rule number 12. Celebrate diversity. Learn about and actively engage with those different to you. Learn about other communities, religions, nationalities, and people. If you don't learn about others, you'll never understand them and therefore miss out on the opportunity to build bonds, friendships, and common goals and interests. If you don't know your neighbors, then how can you come together as a united community? Learn about other people and have fun. After all, diversity is what makes the world so interesting. So there you have it. 12 simple principles to follow from the ground up to make the world a little more harmonious, understanding, tolerant, and ultimately peaceful. Never think you can't make a difference, because you really can. Take note of what Gracia Michelle said. Ask yourself what you can do to make a difference. Then take that action, no matter how large or small. There's a lot of people out there who care deeply about some social issue, but aren't sure what they can do to make a difference. For many of us, it is hard to know how we can help. It's easy to become disillusioned and perhaps cynical. The systems and structures that govern the world don't seem to be working. There is war and poverty. There is discrimination, inequality, and violence. The issues are big. They are complex. It can't be overwhelming. The good news is that everyone can do something to make a difference. Sure, the problems are complex, but to be effective in making change, the solutions must be simple. I hope the ideas shared will inspire you and many others to take some action for peace and justice, no matter how large or how small. Now, grade 10. Here is your activity. Write a journal entry or reflection on how peace education be implemented in this pandemic era. Thank you. Keep safe.